Welcome back, everyone, to the Nebraska Liquor Control Commission hearing. Hope everyone had a good lunch and actually got to go outside. I was a little surprised at that large glowing ball in the air, so they have seen for 3 weeks. When we left, just several housekeeping things. Remember, if you have your cell phone on, please turn it off. I know a lot of times you turn it back on, and let's turn it back off. Also, if you have to take a conversation, please take it out the hallway. And it's a little warm in here, so hopefully we'll keep it going, because if you feel compelled to take your chairs, I'll go, and I probably will before the end of the year. All right, when last we left, Mr. Dahman had rested his case on behalf of his clients. I then asked for any of the citizen protesters who were not representing Mr. Dahman, who wanted to testify to come forward and talk to me, and 3 of them did. And so we're going to go, and they wanted a brief time to address the commission. So first, I will just go and Bruce, will we go, Mr. Baumfleur?
Yes.
I told you about the phones. Mr. Baumfleur, would you please raise your hand this morning?
Yes.
Just swear the testimony about to give you the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Mr. Baumfleur, would you please state your name and spell your name?
Yes, it's Bruce Bonfleur. It's capital B-R-U-C-E. Last name is Louis Range. Capital B-O-N. Capital F-L-E-U-R.
Thank you. And you filed a protest in regard to 4 liquor license applications based on the law enforcement, correct?
Yes, we're based,
Well, you filed it. You're protesting.
Yes.
Okay. Yes. And I wish to address the commission on this. I'll try to guide you through on testimony. But mostly you're a party yourself, but you're pro se litigant, so part of my job is to make sure you get your story out and deal with that issue. So why don't you please go forth why you filed the objection to the issue, to the renewal of the 4 licenses.
Sure. If I could, can I just read my introduction?
Yeah, that's right.
Yes, okay. I try to keep it to no more than 2 pages. Okay. I'm just going to read. You guys can read along or read with me. Okay. My name is Bruce Bonfleur. I've been a Sheridan County resident for the past 15 years. 7 of those years as a resident of Whiteclay. I have ministered full-time on the street in Whiteclay for 13+ years. Currently, I am director of Lakota Hope Ministry Incorporated, which is a Nebraska not-for-profit. Most recently, I've taken on the position as a managing partner in Whiteclay Redevelopment L3C, which is a low-profit limited liability corporation registered in Nebraska. As such, I feel qualified to speak on today's concern. I have served 2 Nebraska governors, one for 2 terms as a board member of Keep Nebraska Beautiful, and in early 2016 was appointed by Governor Ricketts as a member of the Whiteclay Citizens Task Force. For the past 9 years, my wife and I have actively sought help from those in authority at both the local and state levels, including many diverse agency and organizational levels and their staffs. In all of our efforts, we have promoted positive ideas and some solutions to the problems in Whiteclay. Never have we participated in marches or protests against the Whiteclay beer stores. We continue to operate in that vein and with that approach today. As a result of those efforts, we have frequently been the subject of many media reports. In every case, when given the opportunity, we have spoken in positive, life-giving, futuristic terms, hopeful ones. Not every report or reporter has emphasized our intent. I've often been referred to as Pastor Bonfleur. That is something I am not, officially or in a churchy sense. I consider myself a servant and an advocate called to a people group, the Lakota Nation, and a place like Whiteclay, Nebraska. That is why I sit here today to offer evidence that the question before the commission of is there adequate law enforcement in Whiteclay, in my opinion and experience, is
I'm going to object.
I thought I was able to read my
Well, you're able to
statement.
I'm going to overrule the objection.
Okay.
You're speaking, I believe there's foundation. He's lived there for 15 years, 13+ years. He can make an opinion as to what he sees on the streets.
I don't disagree with that, Mr. Root. The problem is there's no definition of adequate law enforcement. So it's nearly impossible to have a foundation to define that.
He'll find what he thinks are law enforcement challenges. The decision whether it's adequate law enforcement is up to 3 commissioners. Their interpretation of the statutes.
In my qualified opinion and experience, it's easily answered about is there adequate law enforcement in Whiteclay, Nebraska? The answer is no, emphatically. Pastors, and which I've not, are taught that a three-point sermon is the most effective. Today I'm going to borrow from that wisdom and that technique. Here are the 3 points that I hope you will take into consideration as you decide what to do. My first point is the Whiteclay Task Force recommendations, and these are in order. Number one, this is what came when Governor Ricketts, who by the way showed up in person at the county attorney's office on February 1st of 2016. None of us expected him to be there, but he was there. And so he very clearly commissioned the people that were gathered in that room to search for what he called low-hanging fruit, to come up with solutions and ideas and ways to pursue. He believes, his philosophy is that solutions should
I'm
come.
object on foundation and hearsay about the governor's beliefs and philosophy.
Well, he stated it.
That's what I was going to say. So
Okay.
you were heard, and this is what your recollection of what
Yes.
the governor said to you.
Yes, and he's even been quoted in media reports saying his exact words. First point is the Whiteclay Task Force recommendations, and these are in order that this group of people over a year debated, talked about, and this is what we came up with. Number one was to secure additional law enforcement or necessary funding to provide for that. Number two, to eliminate the dilapidated, unsafe, unhealthy buildings. Number three,
Relevance. That doesn't have to do with the issue before the commission.
Sure, it
which is
does.
adequate law enforcement.
I'm going to give him a little bit of, as a pro se litigant, a little bit of leeway in this. This is the recommendations that he was part of, which I also believe 2 of your clients are part of making these
Yes.
recommendations as well.
It doesn't matter. The issue is adequate law enforcement.
I-
And I can read what he's going to say. These don't have anything to do with adequate law enforcement.
I'm going to allow a little, try to keep it to limited law.
Sure.
To add a law.
okay, can I finish the Whiteclay Task Force?
I believe that if you're going to have that, you're just reading right now. This has been marked as exhibit
Okay.
180.
Oh, you all can read this?
Well, I'm going to say, do you wish to offer exhibit 180?
Oh, yes, yes, sir, I do.
Any objection? None.
You're saying foundation, relevance to those portions that don't relate to the adequacy of law enforcement.
I'm going to receive it in evidence.
Okay.
With the limitation that these are recommendations made. Some might be outside, beyond the scope of adequate law enforcement. Some are germane to that issue.
Which number was that, 178?
Be 180.
180.
I'm going to receive 180.
Okay.
So it's in evidence.
Yes, thank you. Those recommendations, like I said, were decided on by this group, and the active members of that task force included a county commissioner, the county attorney, assistant county attorney, the county sheriff, 2 Whiteclay merchants, and all the beer store owners and myself. That's who made up the group. The main point I wanted to stress was this local group agreed that the number one solution to the Whiteclay problem is the need for additional law enforcement. Point 2, the results of the task force relating to the issue of needed law enforcement. In your book, there is the actual, and I'm the one that got those statistics for 2015 from the director of the OST, this Tribal Ambulance Agency, or whatever it is, department. And the ambulance calls, the statistics, I don't know what you all have before. I think some others have presented this, but you probably not.
We've got your...
Okay. The detail, the bottom line is that according to the director at that time when I went to her office personally and got these figures, was that there was in 2015 there were a total of 152 ambulance calls within this Whiteclay.
I'm going to object to hearsay and foundation and relevance. I believe the motion in limine specifically addresses ambulance calls in that part of the...
I'm going to sustain that objection.
Okay. All right. Okay. You have pictures, okay, in your books, your information. As a result of serving on that task force, I was invited and took up the invitation, and I spoke to the executive board of the Panhandle Public Health District. Took them and showed them those exact pictures and spoke with them briefly. And as a result of that, they sent a letter to the building and property owners in Whiteclay, telling them to clean up their property. And as a result of that, there's now a $100,000 grant on bid to do just that. Point 3, if the axiom of picture is worth 1,000 words is true, then I present to you in photographic form a few thousand words, actually more like 30,000, of what Whiteclay looks like, feels like, and smells like. Concluding, literally, there are a million more words than others written about Whiteclay, not good ones, spoken and otherwise shared to a worldwide audience. Thousands of video and still photo images are shared widely by many who can personally attest to the human tragedy and suffering still going on, even as we gather here. After decades of avoidance, discussion, protest, and political and governmental inaction to correct a great wrong. Several years ago, the Nebraska Tourism Department selected Whiteclay as a tourist destination spot in their annual passport program. The particular theme for Whiteclay, the reason people were encouraged to go there was, quote, to meet the locals. Either this was some sort of sarcastic sick humor on a staff person's part, or it was a visionary and hopeful act. I choose the latter. Finally, I believe, as I'm sure you do, in our nation's founding principles, in particular those endowed by our creative life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. Part of that ideal includes the right to conduct fair and legal businesses. However, I believe that when that right infringes on or even denies, as Whiteclay does, those basic human rights we associate with dignity and well-being, then either that business needs to be abolished or the environment that allows it to change. This is what you will have to determine and enact. May the Creator who made all people in His image and considered it good grant you His wisdom this day.
Thank you, Mr. Upwood. Any cross-examination or questions, Mr. Donald?
No.
Mr. Snyder?
No.
Ms. West?
Mr. Boncour, you mentioned that you were part of the Whiteclay task force for
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
And if I understand correctly, there were some representatives of the Whiteclay, the liquor licensees on
Yes.
that task force as well?
Yes,
Can you tell me who they are?
They're all sitting here. Jason Schwarting, Clay Bramer, Stuart Kozel, and, sorry, the name?
Jeff Sanford?
Sanford, yes, sir.
Okay. So all four of them were part of the task force?
Yes.
And did they participate in these meetings?
Yes.
Have you had any conversations with any of those four individuals?
When? I mean, in those meetings or since then?
You guys are both talking.
Sorry.
Did you have any conversations with any of these individuals during your task force meetings?
Briefly? Yes.
And have you had conversations with these four individuals at other times?
Yes.
I haven't had any conversations with them in particular related to issues regarding law enforcement on the streets of Whiteclay, Nebraska?
No.
Any questions?
Do you have,
I'm sorry.
that doesn't matter. So you had said earlier that the first thing that came out of the task force was a desire to secure resources for additional law enforcement in Whiteclay, Nebraska.
Yes.
Do you know whether the four liquor licensees in Whiteclay expressed their opinion about that?
I believe they can speak for themselves, but I believe yes that they all, everybody voted on these 6 recommendations in this order, so I believe yes, they definitely had input. Whether they specifically said, I'm in favor of that, I don't know. No one questions the fact that there needs to be additional law enforcement, including the beer store.
And just so I understand then, did you see these licensees vote for that particular recommendation?
Yeah, I can't remember specific. I would say yes. We didn't raise hands. We just said aye. Yes.
And sir, you said that you've been a resident of Whiteclay for 7 years?
Yes.
Can you tell the commission what your general presence in Whiteclay on any given day? Tell us what you do in Whiteclay on any given day.
Okay, well, we live there. Okay, so more so than anyone else, I think, in this room, we live there for, well, actually on the property at the south end of town, what we call the Good Hope Center. We've lived there for going on 4 years. Prior to that, we lived just down the road a little bit, what still technically is called Whiteclay. So that adds up to 7 years. But our life is, we live there 24/7. We're full-time there and have been for almost 4 years in that house just south of where the beer stores are located. So we live at 24 hours. So we have people knock on our doors at 4 a.m. with gashes down their face. We have people come up and try to give us kitty cats because they're concerned that they're not going to make it through a night in Whiteclay. We have people who come for money, for food, for clothes, for almost everything. So we live 24. It's all the time. It's all the time.
And have you had any personal observations of intoxicated individuals on the streets of Whiteclay?
Oh gosh, yes.
And can you give us,
Thousands.
looking at now, you said that you've ministered on the streets of Whiteclay for 13 years?
Yes.
So over this, let's talk about a daily occurrence.
Sure.
Over the past 7 years, first of all,
Mhm.
okay? Can you tell the commission what you observed in that regard?
We observe on average, again, weather conditions dictate things, but generally on average, in the course of the day, probably somewhere between 25 and 50 people coming in and off the streets. We actually subcontracted one of our rooms. We had a building right in town, right across, right next to Pioneer, on the immediately south, and then immediately east of Junkie Eagles. So we were in a prime spot to see what was observed, what was going on the street. So we operated a thrift store. We subcontracted to another ministry to a feeding program. And so I was in regular contact for years, whether I stepped outside the door or not. They came in the doors. When they fed at lunch, that probably averaged 30, 35 people a day, sometimes more, 50 or 60. I think the record attendance for a lunch in Whiteclay was 125 people one day. That was at the end of the month, by the way, when people, if you understand about the economy and things there, that was because some people were just hungry. That who normally would be on the street. That's why that exorbitant number was there.
So clarifying, Bill, when you were saying the 100 people you're talking about coming into each, I was asking you about intoxicated individuals.
Oh yeah. Nearly everyone who's on the street is in some state of intoxication. Many of them pass out at various times, but almost, I think if you tested anybody, short of them just arriving in town, they would qualify as, I don't know what those percentages are, but they would be intoxicated.
And have you observed, with this estimate that you've given, observed those individuals to be in possession of alcohol?
Oh yes, it's common, open on containers all the time. Yeah.
And how many individuals would you estimate on a daily basis?
They have open containers,
That have open
basically what's on public property right away. Dozens and dozens a day.
Have you observed any other types of concerning activity or criminal activity on the streets of Whiteclay?
Yes, I've seen, of course, fights. I think my wife may attest to some other circumstances that come up. I've had people call me from a restaurant that's across from our building where there's a big picture window, C&R restaurant, say, hey, Bruce, you've got some folks over there. Well, they told me this. She told me, she said,
I gotta make a roll.
Oh, sorry.
So you get a conversation with somebody.
Yeah.
Called you.
Yeah, we've had lots of conversations, but I've observed many.
Yeah, let's see with your observations.
Okay, sure. We'll clarify.
Okay, so you were talking about your own observations,
Mhm.
using fights on the streets.
Oh,
When was
yeah.
the last time that you saw something like that?
A fight? 2 weeks ago.
And can you tell me do you have contact with the Sheridan County Sheriff's Office or any other law enforcement officials?
Yes, we do. Sometimes, yeah. We do observe them come into Whiteclay various times. I have called them a number of times. It's to the point where we make a decision. I make a decision often. Is this something that we would call the sheriff about, or do we wait it out? Do we spend time, work with the person? We have to make decisions all the time. How serious they are. When it's serious, we call the sheriff or the ambulance. Service.
And can you tell me have you had responses from law enforcement when you've made contact?
Yes, we have. I can't say always that they were there. What I might expect, Sheridan County is a big county, top to bottom, and so I understand that it takes time to get there.
And are you saying that there is a period of time before law enforcement can make it to Whiteclay?
Generally, most of the time when I've called, yes, there has been. Now, sometimes they just happen to be close to the area or even in town, and that's a different situation.
And I'm speaking about the Sheridan County Sheriff's Office
Yes.
and State Patrol.
Yes.
Do you have personal experience have you had personal observations about how often the Sheridan County Sheriff's Office patrols in town?
I don't know what scale to put that on.
How about per week?
Per week? How many times do I see a deputy's car? Several, 3 to 5.
3 to 5 times a week?
Yes, I think probably on average, yes.
And how about the State Patrol?
Much rarer. Yeah, much rarer.
And can you estimate per week?
Oh, 25. Not even. Yeah.
Would you say?
Not very often, no. I mean, I know there was a time when they were there on a regular basis for a certain time, but as far as the state, trooper cars there, just a small percentage compared to the county sheriff.
But you do believe that you see the county sheriff coming into the street, into Whiteclay 5 times a week?
Some weeks, probably, and it could also, there are some weeks when I might not see him maybe once or twice. I don't keep count of that.
And how about just like a regular patrol for a long period of time? Do you see anything like that from either law enforcement agency?
No.
So when you do see law enforcement in town, can you give an estimate of how long they're there?
Gosh, an estimate. Oh, sometimes they park, okay, at one end of town or by a building or something, so they could be there for an hour or more at times. I know they've been there at that time. Other times, they're just cruising through and they're in and out, and everything in between.
And would you say that the presence has increased in the last year?
Yes.
So more so than years past?
Yes.
So in 2015, maybe that would be a difference, is that correct?
Yeah, as there's been more and more media coverage and attention focused on Whiteclay, I think they loved it.
You had mentioned that you had observed assaults, or a few assaults. Any other activity, concerning activity, illegal activity that you observed on the streets of Whiteclay?
Well, I don't know if it's illegal to urinate, defecate, pass out. I don't know. I don't know all the specific laws. My understanding is that it is against the law to urinate or be intoxicated on public property. And my understanding in Whiteclay, if you've been to Whiteclay, the right-of-way from the center of Highway 87 basically goes to the front door, in the front door of every business in town. And so there are the people that you see on the street are sitting on the right-of-way drinking in open containers.
Drinking open containers and then also the urinating on the street, defecating on the street?
Yeah, to the point sometimes that we cannot. I have been in my office through a brick wall where there's so much urine and feces around our building that I could not stay in my office. And I have personally spoken with other business owners who have the same situation, same experience.
Okay, I have no further questions.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yeah, right.
My question is that at any one time, had the business community come to you, or you come to the business community and said, let's hire our own constable to take care of this problem?
Not today. We did come together to do a cleanup. We did. We hosted a meeting, and I think 18 of the 21 landowners or business owners were present at that meeting, and that was for a good cause. That was to clean up the town.
And so that was a community project where they actually did it themselves, you get folks there yourselves?
I'm sorry.
I didn't understand.
We sent out a letter of invitation to all the business owners in Whiteclay, land owners, and the vast majority of them came to that meeting.
But that was waiting for some funds to come from someplace else?
Yeah, we had already been granted a SEP grant through the Attorney General then, John Bruning, and so we've always reached out, and we've always tried to keep lines of communication open, regardless. And so that was an effort on our part to let everybody know what we were doing and why. And we actually had a barbecue cookout where on our property where, believe it or not, it rained for like 4 days solid that week at that time, and we had to put it under a tent. And it was so cool to see people from the street, who, by the way, we refer to as risen warriors, not street people or ne'er-do-wells or hopeless drunks, but we see them as God sees them. And it was so awesome to see them sitting next to Sheridan County business owners and the president of the tribe and the Attorney General of the state of Nebraska and 3 other state senators all sitting around with each other around tables eating barbecue in Whiteclay.
But you haven't really seen the community take hold of the problem?
No, sir, but we recently formed an organization, what I mentioned at the beginning, the L3C, and as soon as some of these things are resolved, we know where we're going and stuff, we intend to call that type of meeting for the purpose of economic redevelopment of Whiteclay, Nebraska.
Any more questions?
Mr. Bontour, I want to just clarify a couple of points that came up and follow up if I could on Mr. Dale's question. I don't think we've had testimony in the record about this yet. Is it accurate to say that Whiteclay does not have municipal elections? It doesn't have a mayor, it doesn't have a city council. It's not a city or village, is it?
It's not even Whiteclay technically. It's legally.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
Yeah, it's not even Whiteclay technically. It's actually legally doing Nebraska, DEWING. So no, it's not incorporated. There's no elections.
All right. And so, at least in terms of a constable, there would be no way that a group of people there could employ someone and have the lawful authority to have them to confer arrest powers on them by making their office service there.
There is no such organization.
Yeah. I think it was absolutely clear to those of us in the room from being able to see your body language, but I'm not sure your question and answer closed on this point, so I want to be sure that I ask you when it closes. You said that there were times when you're not able to stay in your office.
Yes.
Was that because of the stench of
Yes.
human urine and feces?
Yes. Yes. In particular, our building, where that happened to me was in a building that we had for 10.5 years. And we only had like a foot outside that building that we owned. Our property was that close to the property line. And so along those, and there are pictures, you guys have pictures of those, the stuff that looks like poop going down the side of the wall, that's what it is. Okay, and so that's really.
I want to ask you about one other behavior, about whether you have or have not observed this occurring in public. Have you seen persons in Whiteclay engaged in the act of sex in public? That is intercourse.
Thing, because I've seen a lot of things. I've seen evidence that act has occurred, okay, but I have not seen that act.
Have you ministered to persons who have been emotionally distraught and reported that they are immediately post rape?
I think so. I can't give you a specific date, but I believe maybe in the course of those years, possibly twice. We'll mention too, when I was on the governor's Keep Nebraska Beautiful board, when we had that picnic, we had the director of Keep Nebraska Beautiful, Jane Polson, was there, and she conducted, by the way, Keep America Beautiful is the organization that sets litter criteria for the United States of America. And according to their scale, the entire town, her test, and she could attest to this, but the entire town, from one end to the other, qualifies as a dump, a legal dump.
Object on relevance.
I'm going to state objections rather than with.
That's going to be true.
One of the
Yeah, let's go across.
Sure.
one of the documents that was distributed, and I think marked as Exhibit 179.
That's my wife's. Yeah.
Oh, this is Mrs. Von Bush. You got that?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
I just have questions. You've been in Whiteclay for 13 years.
Yes, sir.
Have the problems that you've discussed been constant in that 13 years?
Yeah, they're constant. The reason I'm hesitating is because I'm trying to determine if we're trying to get at them, they got worse. There are times when I believe they've gotten worse.
There's always been, in your opinion, drinking on public property.
Oh, sure. Some
Or an intoxicated person or more.
Yes.
Occasionally there's fights.
Yes.
And those things haven't changed in 13 years.
No.
And the law enforcement in that same 13 years hasn't changed, other than you said in 2016 law enforcement actually increased, correct?
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly. Yeah, I know to some degree. To some degree. And of course, there was a drastic increase for a time period when there were protests at the state line. There had been some people running across, damaging the trucks, the delivery trucks. And so for a time period, there was a lot of increased state and sheriff and other.
Was that the protest in 98 or 99? Or?
Gosh, I'm not sure what time it was, whenever that was.
Right. Just
more recent than law
make sure I'm
enforcement.
clear, from whenever you got there 13 years ago through 2015, your testimony is the police presence was fairly constant most years.
For the most part, yes, sir. Inadequate, but
And
constant.
in 2016, that police presence has increased.
That's the year that they were under. I don't remember what year that was. I don't think it was, no, it wasn't last year. I think it was the year.
Just talking about last year. So you testified earlier, there's been
Yeah.
more law enforcement activity in the
Yeah.
last year.
Somewhat, yes.
Okay, I don't have anything else.
I have one more very short thing that came out of that, very, very brief.
Okay.
You remember being asked if anything had changed just a moment ago?
You just say yes or no.
Well, one thing has changed, isn't it? Some people have died and been replaced by others.
I'm going to object to leaving and beyond the scope of the issue before the...
I'm going to sustain the objection. No further questions. Well, I'll just say one question.
Mr. Buncore, have you seen, so there's been an increase in law enforcement presence? It's not testified.
Yes.
Have you seen that in the last
Somewhat,
year?
yeah, at certain times.
At
Yeah.
certain times.
Yeah.
So it's
I
not.
think when the word gets out that somebody's coming to check on town, it seems to increase.
So when law enforcement does come into town, have you seen a decrease in the incidence of public intoxication?
Not at all.
And how about any other activities?
No,
Straightening up or anything like that?
no.
And you had mentioned that, I know that Mr. Lewis sustained the objection with respect to being designated as a dump, so I'm not going to ask you about that. But I do want to ask you, when you mentioned that, when you were talking about littering, is that
Yes.
right? And does that include cans of beer?
You mean the litter?
Yeah.
It's almost, oh, yes, lots of stuff, yeah. All kinds of items, oh, certainly. Yeah.
What, can you tell us what you observe in terms of cans of beer, empty cans of beer left in the streets?
Well, there are times, depending on the time of the month, how much you see on the street. Okay, we have a 5.5 acre property at the end of town, so it's like on 1,000 feet of frontage on the highway. We also adopted that stretch of the highway, probably the biggest stretch of highway in Nebraska. So we picked up a lot. So it is. I'm not going to say, the people that are on the street and others come to as an income source pick up cans on a regular basis. But there are times when there's a lot of cans, and not just cans, but also bottles, liquor bottles.
Okay, when you say a lot of cans and liquor bottles, can you tell me?
About?
Generally what you see on the daily basis.
Yeah, I can tell you one thing. We once in our building, we had a young man who had a recycling business, and he told me one time, he showed me the statistics that the first 10 days or so of the month, when the money's gone.
Your state.
I'm going to sustain the objection here, sir.
Just limit it to your observations if you can.
Ask the question again, yeah.
Okay, so on a daily basis, observations of alcohol containers and cans of beer.
Oh, yeah.
Bottles and cans.
Every day.
Of alcohol. And
Yes.
and approximately how many you see on the street.
After a night earlier in the morning is when it's most, and I would probably say if you went around collecting everything, I see how many bags they pick up and stuff, I would say hundreds.
All right, thank you.
Anything else you put? Literally a further question. When you say liquor bottles, are you referring to hard liquor?
Yes.
Not beer.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Bonsor.
I made it.
Thank you for testifying.
I have a
I'm sorry.
question. I've been trying to do the math of this whole thing, which is an intricate part. If there's an average, according to your associate, of 50 people per day, times 365 divided by 3.8 million cans sold per year out of the 4 beer stores, it's impossible, in my book, that they could consume that much, as alcoholic as they are. Where's it going? What's your opinion of
Oh, you mean where the alcohol's, most of it?
Yeah.
Oh, back on the reservation.
Do you ever see people loading up cases?
I know that by law they can do that. I don't recall an incident myself of seeing someone load cases of beer.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bonsor. More responsible. Please raise your hand. Ms. Moore.
You swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? And you just keep the microphone down. There you go.
Could you please state your name and spell your name for the record?
Marcia Bonfleur, Marsaj, Bonfleur.
And, counsel, she's filed Exhibit 179, I believe it was prior. Is that going to be your proposed testimony is found in Exhibit 179?
Yes,
You going to have to do the testimony through, or, okay, all right. Ms. Bumper, now you didn't file a citizen's protest, correct?
I did.
Please begin.
I've been a Sheridan County resident for the past 14 years, and more specifically a resident of Whiteclay for 7 of those years, from 2002 to 2005, from 2013 until now. For those of you who have not visited the unincorporated town of Whiteclay, it's a tiny community that fits in an area of less than 1 square mile, less than a city block. I would like to submit the following statement as evidence to support the case being presented that there is inadequate law enforcement in the unincorporated town of Whiteclay, Nebraska. One evening after dark, I heard a woman screaming in my neighborhood. When the screaming continued, and knowing the sheriff was at least 20 minutes away, I got in my car to investigate. As I drove north towards Pine Ridge, I saw a woman I knew from the street staggering up the dirt road between Jumping Eagle's beer store and the abandoned building next to Abe's Speed Store. She was being followed by 6 men, laughing and yelling sexual insults at her. When I pulled over to pick her up, she said...
I'm going to ask object on hearsay. In defense of the statement, I think it's an excited utterance and admissible as an exception to the hearsay rule.
I would agree out loud. Overruled.
When I pulled over to pick her up, she said they had trained or gang raped her, and she asked if I could take her home. When I suggested calling the sheriff, she refused, saying that it would take too long for them to arrive and they wouldn't do anything anyway. I then offered to take her to Indian Health Services, but she refused again and asked that I take her to her home in Pine Ridge. One sunny August afternoon in my neighborhood, I was driving from Pine Ridge to Lakota Hope with a summer volunteer when I saw a woman I knew lying passed out on the edge of the road between the Fireside Inn and the Pioneer Beer Store. Her jeans were down around her ankles and her underwear was down below her knees. People were crossing the street so they wouldn't have to walk by her. I walked over and I pulled over, and the volunteer and I ran across the street to see if she was okay. She was totally passed out and I couldn't rouse her. I didn't have my phone, and so I called out for help, but nobody responded. We pulled her pants up and the volunteer stayed with her while I drove the rest of the way to Lakota Hope to get my phone so I could call an ambulance. When I got back, she had come to. I told her how we found her and asked her what had happened. Her reply was that
Object on hearsay.
I'm going to have to sustain that one. I'm not sure that the following is excited utterance.
And I tell you what she told me?
No.
No.
The issue is, of course, is hearsay testimony is not admissible, where you can't say what somebody else told you. And there are certain exceptions. In this case here, it does not fall within one of these exceptions.
I think you'd have to go to the next paragraph.
On another steamy, hot summer afternoon in my neighborhood, a woman from the street who I knew was lying close to the street in the parking lot of State Line Beer Store, screaming, "Just let me die," over and over. No one from State Line, Abe's, or Whiteclay Grocery, which are right across the street, came out of their businesses to see what was wrong. One of the other women from the street was trying to get her across the street so she could sit in the shade in front of Abe's. She refused because she said the label would call the sheriff if she leaned against his building. We both assured her we would talk to the owner and helped her across the street to the shade. None of these women would allow me to call an ambulance. They all knew that when I dial 911 from Whiteclay, the Sheridan County dispatcher answers. But instead of sending an ambulance from Rushville, the call is relayed to Pine Ridge. When an ambulance comes from Pine Ridge, the patient is taken to the Pine Ridge jail after they're treated for their injuries or illness, because it's illegal to be drunk on the reservation. When people refuse my call to offer an ambulance, I either call family members or I take them home myself. As I walk the streets of my neighborhood, I see multiple people with open containers of beer on public right-of-way every day, 365 days a year. This offense is illegal and subject to arrest in Sheridan County. I also see people fighting on the main street in front of businesses. Many have knives, some have guns. These are arrestable offenses that would not be tolerated in any other Sheridan County or Nebraska community. I also see intoxicated people driving vehicles. Many of these vehicles have no tags or expired tags. I commonly see children riding in these cars, most without seatbelts or car seats. All of these are offenses that are against the law and would receive citations if adequate law enforcement was present. As I walk the streets of my neighborhood, I see Sheridan County law enforcement cars drive past people who have passed out, who are exposed to freezing temperatures, blistering sun, and or swarms of mosquitoes. I see exposed basements and deep holes that people can fall into, especially at night when they're intoxicated. In the vacant lot next to my house, people sleep in abandoned cars. In the winter.
I'm going to object on relevance. I think this is getting pretty far afield of law enforcement. And it doesn't appear to have a relationship to the liquor stores.
May I take the last sentence?
I'm
in that
going to
paragraph?
overrule that objection, but you keep towards how it applies to law enforcement like that.
In people found in these situations, if anywhere else, would be taken into civil protective custody instead of passed by and ignored by law enforcement officials. The list of similar incidents that happen in my neighborhood goes on and on. A man asking me to call the police.
Object on hearsay.
Well, I think we should allow her to answer first, and then we'll let the objection. She's saying we need a statement. I mean, you're reading along, or she's making a statement, then we'll make the early on. Please continue.
A man asking me to call the police because his son was being beaten with bats by a gang. An older woman coming to my door at 4 a.m. with a 4-inch gash from her forehead down to her nose and cheek. The same older woman who told me with tears running down her face how she'd been sodomized by one of the men on the street. Men who sleep on the front porch of the 555 building who have told me about being beaten with bats by teenage boys in pickup trucks with Nebraska tags.
I object on hearsay to all of that. That was related to somebody else.
I would say that you need, this is one part, about evidence that you've seen or been involved with, not just be reported to you.
Okay.
I'll also say that.
As I walk the streets of my neighborhood, I see people loitering, panhandling, urinating, defecating, vomiting, and having sex. I see abandoned houses, abandoned buildings, businesses, the remains of burned down buildings, graffiti covered buildings, and streets littered with beer cans, empty hairspray cans, and trash. As I walk the streets of my neighborhood, I smell stale beer, vomit, urine, and human feces. Although these actions are not against the law, they're certainly not tolerated in other parts of Sheridan County or in any other county in Nebraska. They would be occasional occurrences instead of commonplace and accepted events if there was adequate law enforcement. Because Sheridan County covers such a large area, the 22-mile distance from their base in Rushville makes it impossible for the small force of sheriffs to provide the same quality of law enforcement that other towns receive. would this type of ongoing behavior be tolerated in your neighborhood? I'd like to share a few lines from a well-known children's song written by TV host Fred Rogers. It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood, a beautiful day for a neighbor. Would you be mine? Could you be mine? In closing, I ask you, knowing the level of law enforcement where I live, would you be my neighbor? I think not.
I offer Exhibit 179.
Object on hearsay foundation relevance.
I'm going to sustain the objection in part to the hearsay, with respect her testimony was in regard to hearsay is sustained, her personal observations and received evidence.
I think we should note that what she testified to is essentially a verbatim reading of Exhibit 179.
As well.
I have no questions.
Yes. I'm receiving, once again, I'm subject to the rulings on the hearsay during your testimony.
Mrs. Boncour, can you tell me how many residents are in Whiteclay residence?
Well, that changes and it's disputable, but I think 9 now.
And are you and your husband or 2 of them?
Yes, that's correct.
All right, I have no other questions, thank you.
Mr. Schneider.
Thank you. Mrs. Boncour, do you agree with your husband that, well, first let me ask you, have you also been in Whiteclay for 13 years?
No, we lived in Rushville for a while.
Okay. How long have you been in Whiteclay?
I lived there from 2002 to 2005, and from 2013 until now, for a total of 7 years.
During the years that you lived in Whiteclay, was the law enforcement, presence of law enforcement consistent?
Yes.
Do you believe, as your husband does, that the law enforcement has been greater in 2016 than it has been in the past?
There was a time period where I saw the Nebraska, what are they called? Nebraska.
State Patrol?
State Patrol, thank you. Where for a period of a few weeks, I saw a car every day.
Is that different in the past?
Yes, I've never seen that.
So do you agree with me that law enforcement has been increased in 2016, like your husband did?
To the extent of their presence, to the extent of what I saw being happen there, no.
You don't
That
think-
there were still people walking around with.
I'm not asking what the people were doing, I'm just asking about the presence of law enforcement. Do you agree that it was greater in 2016?
If you have, yeah, if you have to put it that way.
Thank you. I don't have anything else.
Any questions for Mr. Buffer? Yes.
Ms. Boncour, you were asked a question about the presence of law enforcement being consistent during your residency there, right? Tell me what you mean by that. Consistent.
On an everyday basis,
Right.
I don't see. I used to do what Abram does now, the daily walk. I did that for years. And I don't see it. I didn't see, just in this last year, did I see some Nebraska State Patrolmen there for a few weeks, and it was every day in a row.
And what average, on average, how often do you see the sheriff patrol Whiteclay, Nebraska?
I'd say 3 times a week,
And for how long?
just in and out. Sometimes, as my husband said, they would sit on the street for a few minutes. When the Camp Justice was first established, they did escort the beer trucks into Whiteclay.
So on average, for the sheriff and county sheriff, on average, 3 times a week
Yeah.
for just in and out. Is that yes?
Yes.
And I think.
I have one question, that is, we're talking about the presence of the Highway Patrol being stronger in 2016. Is that when we had the investigation of an instance or death or some kind of incident major, or why were they there?
I didn't know why they were there. There was one day that there was the presence of more than one patrol car, and they were going around asking about the death, questions, whether we knew anything. But that was just one particular day.
Okay, so they came for the one day, and there was more than one car.
Yeah.
Now, is that gone and it's back to normal again?
For sure. Yeah, I don't see them again.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
No.
Take this month where it's yours. And one other individual who was assistant for Justice Bensel.